Well, welcome to OmniFocus Workflows with Kourosh Dini, and it's my pleasure to have Kourosh back on Learn OmniFocus. He was actually the very first guest back in 2015, very first workflow guest, and so we've come full circle by having him back today, and I'm really excited to hear more about what he has to share. And we've got many people here from around the world, and many people I'm sure will be watching and recording this as well. So you're very welcome, whether you're here live or watching a recording. I just want to mention a little bit about Learn OmniFocus for those of you who are new, just to give you a taste of how this site came to be and its core purpose for being. So it started back in 2014, right after OmniFocus 2 for Mac was released. And its reason for existing back then, and which is still very true today, is to help people around the world live a fulfilling and productive life with OmniFocus and complementary productivity apps helping in that process. So it's centered around OmniFocus, but it's really much more than OmniFocus. It's an opportunity to learn about best practices for productivity and structuring your days and your systems, and using multiple apps together, and sometimes even using pen and paper alongside the technology. So it's a very multi-dimensional. What makes it work well, I think, is that all of us have something in common in that we all use OmniFocus. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, on the west coast of Canada, which is really convenient. I'm just down the road from the Omni Group, and I can drive there in about 3 hours in good traffic. And I've been to their office several times, and have had a chance to meet with the team and share feedback and enjoy a nice meal at OmniFocus or Omni Group HQ. So it's a great group of people down there in Seattle. And we also have some wonderful people in the Learn OmniFocus community, literally all over the world. It's in 77 countries at last count, and we've got every continent represented except Antarctica. I haven't tapped into the penguin population yet, and I don't think their flippers are very well adapted for using Macs and iPads and things like that. A warm welcome as well to people who have joined very recently. There's a lot of people who have joined in the past week as part of our Black Friday promotion. And something I really want to be doing with Learn OmniFocus is supporting our global community and people who maybe don't have the same access that we do, the same privileges. And so this year I sponsored an organization that I think many of you will be familiar with called CARE. They've been around since 1945, started just after the Second World War. And their core belief is that everyone deserves a chance to succeed. And I think that's a wonderful mantra. They particularly focus on women and girls, making sure they have access to education and can really step into leadership roles around the world. So I'm happy to announce I donated $1,200 yesterday at a CARE event here in Vancouver, and even happier to discover that the government of Canada is going to be matching that tenfold. So we've got a $13,200 Canadian donation on behalf of the Learn OmniFocus community. So it's great to have that outreach and that opportunity to serve around the world. So if you're new to Learn OmniFocus, one of the key components is Learn OmniFocus Live. And there's a few different aspects to that. One is we do theme sessions. Most recent one was around creating structure in OmniFocus. So one's where we go into a specific topic, and you can come here, attend these live, meet some other Learn OmniFocus community members, and these are recorded, so if you want to review them afterwards, you'll have that opportunity, or if you're not able to make the live session, you can watch the recordings as well. We also have workflow guests, just like Kourosh is here today, and we'll have another workflow guest next week. And again, this is a great opportunity to meet the people who are using OmniFocus in all kinds of interesting ways, to ask them questions, to share feedback, and so forth. And if you want to meet people in a smaller, more intimate setting, there's OmniFocus office hour sessions, and these are typically about twice a month, and I'll continue to add more of these as our community grows. And these specifically aren't recorded, so you can come and talk about things in a confidential session, and they're limited to 10 people, and everyone's on video, so you can actually get to know people and hear more about their story and what's working and not working for them around workflows and OmniFocus and things like that. If you want some one-on-one help, I've been doing consulting for many years, and you can go to learnomnifocus.com/private to learn more about that. And just a little taste of what's coming soon, and I'll be adding much more to this list very soon. There's some things that are coming down the pike that I'm looking forward to announcing soon, but a few things that are coming very soon. Next week, David Sparks will be the guest, and he's definitely been an inspiration for me around technology and productivity, and I'm really excited to have him on the Learn OmniFocus Live next week. He's well known for his Mark Sparky blog, marksparky.com, that he's been writing in for about, I'm not sure how many years now, a very long time, as long as I can remember. He's also very well known for his field guides, and he recently released the 3rd edition of the OmniFocus Field Guide. There's one on gift wrapping as well that came out recently. So if you want to learn how to wrap gifts, he really covers a broad spectrum. But these field guides are excellent and definitely give you some really good practical advice. He's also the co-host of three podcasts, including Mac Power Users, Automators, and Free Agents. And these are 3 that I listen to religiously. I think I've heard every episode of every podcast, so there are lots of great information in those. And as I mentioned, he'll be joining us next week, so that'll be Wednesday, December 5th from 10 to 11 Pacific time. And if you're a Learn OmniFocus member, you're welcome to attend live, and I'll be making a free recording available to everyone as well. I'm also really excited to announce that Rose Orchard has joined the Learn OmniFocus team, and so you'll be seeing a lot of Rose moving forward. She'll be doing some of the live sessions, creating some of the articles and video content. And Rose's first live session she'll be leading, beyond the one that she led talking about her own workflows, is called Automating OmniFocus 3 using Siri shortcuts. And this first one will be covering the basics. So if you don't know anything about Siri shortcuts, if you've never really done any automation, this is a great one to attend. And if you do have some experience with this and just want to fill in some of the gaps in your knowledge, this is also a great one to attend as well. And she'll be walking through many different ways to use automation, including some that you can literally start to use right away. So there's definitely some low-hanging fruits that you can tap into. So that'll be in a couple of weeks on Wednesday, December 12th from 10 to 11 Pacific time. And then in January, on January 30th, there'll be one that goes beyond the basics that she covers and gets into some of the more advanced things. So you can play with it over the holidays and into January and come back with lots of questions and learn about some of the more advanced things you can do with Siri shortcuts. I'm also going to be leading one in January called Navigating Your Day, and this is follow-up to the Creating Structure that I led last month, or earlier this month actually. And this will get into how to actually use OmniFocus as you go through the day, and I'm sure Kourosh will be talking about this as well. So that's a challenge a lot of people find, is they've got so much they could be doing in any given moment. How do you actually use what you've got in OmniFocus to make sure you're doing the most productive tasks and the ones that are most applicable? So that'll be on Wednesday, January 16th from 10 to 11 Pacific time. There's also 3 Learn OmniFocus office hours sessions open for registration. So you can register for these and learn more if you go to learnomnifocus.com/live. And at the top of that live page, you'll also see a calendar URL. So if you want to subscribe to this calendar, you can see all of these in your own time zone. And then if you click on the appointment, you'll see a link to the registration page as well as a description in there. So that's especially if you're in a different time zone, that's a really great way to keep track of these things. Okay, and without further ado, I want to introduce our guest of honor for today, Kourosh Dini. And Kourosh really, in many ways, was one of my first teachers for OmniFocus. I remember reading his book when I was using OmniFocus for the first time, and it was definitely something that really got me going and motivated me to continue using this tool. So I'm really happy to have him here today. He's a psychiatrist. He has got a practice in Chicago, and you can learn more about that at KouroshdiniMD.com. And he's also written numerous books, including these three, and one is specifically about OmniFocus. And I'm sure he'll be giving us a good taste of this as we go through. And if you haven't already picked up his book, it's a great reference to have. There's a lot of depth there, not just on the features in OmniFocus, but getting into the Kourosh's experience around workflows and how to approach it, and how to be in that zen space even when things are getting a little hectic and there's a lot coming at you. So I think that's a very valuable life skill in general. So that third edition is out quite recently, and that's now available at usingomnifocus.com. So at this point, it's my pleasure to pass it over to you, Kourosh.
So hey everybody. Tim, thank you as always. Thank you very much for having me here. This is cool. I was here once before, and I was excited to talk here then. I'm excited to talk here now, and so I'll say a little bit about myself first, and then dive right in. So so I'm a psychiatrist and I'm a psychoanalyst, and I'm a musician and I'm an author. And I'm also a husband and a father, and occasionally I play video games when I have the rare moment. And so in that regard, trying to wrangle everything, bring everything together, that's kind of how I came to be where I am now and be able to talk about OmniFocus. So one, because I needed something to help pull it all together, and two, I like to think about thought. I like to think about work. I like to think about intention, what we do with them. And the idea of sorry, I'm just going to write down the questions asked so I can come back to them. How we manage our work is a lot about storing intentions and addressing them. And so anyway, I get into that. I'm sometimes asked about the difference between psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. I can give you a shorthand that psychiatrist is a physician often prescribing medications, maybe some therapy work. Psychoanalyst is very in-depth in terms of therapy work. You may have seen the New Yorker cartoons where somebody's on the couch and the person in the background is kind of doodling or writing something. I'm the person that's sitting and writing something. So I try to do both for people, and there's a lot of parallel actually between that and task management. It may not seem that there is, but there is. There's the concept I always come back to is that mastery and meaningful work develop from guided play, and the same play that the Heraclitus quote of man is most himself when he's in a state of play, and it's this idea of developing that same focus that you find in a toddler that's like deeply focused in their blocks or something. That if we can bring that with ourselves to our adult selves, then we're doing something that's along some path of mastery and meaningful work. So in that way, there's a lot of overlap for me, and it's really just different branches of the same idea. Been a musician since the age of 5, been playing the piano. I stopped briefly at the age of 10 and then picked it back up at the age of 11. So I just kept going, still keep going. And I find that, that's a place where, you actively play with the idea of play and creativity and improvisation. The idea of improvisation as being a play within a structure, and learning that structure and then what to do with that. And anyway, so why don't I jump into the way my current system is set up and how things are, and go over any new paths there. So I'm just showing off my inbox here, and before I really get into anything, one other thought. I want to stress that the most important, at least for me, the most important aspect of productivity is not about OmniFocus. It's that initial pause. It's the ability to stop impulsive, to catch yourself when you're being impulsive, and being able to allow thoughts to come to mind and until they have settled, at which point you can make a settled decision about what you want to do next. You can visualize. That's the state where you sit and allow your thoughts to come to mind and shape, take form, take shape, and you can interact with it in that way. And that's important for large things. We often talk about visualizing large goals, but I think there's also an importance to doing that for small things too, because there's a practice and a rhythm that engages us. And because then what we can do something with those thoughts, and that's where OmniFocus might come in, is this idea of like, okay, I can't do everything at once, and it's good to have this thing that I can build that can support me when and where I want to, so that I can do things in their own time. So again, that pause, that ability to form the intentions to begin with, I find as being the most crucial part of it all. All right. Having said that, the inbox. So I'm gonna kind of step through and sometimes just review some things that I know many of you will find basic, but I think is still important and vital. The inbox is, I think, one of the most powerful tools. I think it's an unsung hero in many ways. I still use the same sort of principles of the getting things done method of clearing it, the 2-minute rule, in which you kind of go from top to bottom and of what's in the inbox. And if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, do it. If it takes longer, address it in some way. And then there's prescribed structures to do that. And the thing is when you have a clear inbox when you begin to work, it can support you in many different places of your work. You can use it to help you decide what to do next. You can use it to, as you are engaging work, thinking through all the things that might be on your mind or aspects that you want to take care of, so that you can clear your mind to engage the thing you want to do. You can use it during work, so that you can throw things in there to knowing full well that it'll wait for you. Whereas if you had a full inbox, you might be worried that you wouldn't be able to get to it. And at the end of a session, when you are using it to be thorough in your work, all those things that you couldn't, all those paths you couldn't follow while you were working, can now be engaged better. Now, it's a lot easier to say clear the inbox than to actually do it. And I often will run into many who are actually quite distressed that they won't do it or can't do it, often, or having a hard time, often calling themselves lazy or otherwise, something along those lines. And I don't believe it's laziness. It's, in fact, the word itself bothers me. I think it's because it misses out on the fact that laziness in a way is actually a motivated act, that one calls oneself that in a way to buy themselves out of something. And I can say a lot more about that, but I won't right now. It's more about a lack of habit and a lack of a system. And if there is no system, or the system is unhealthy, it's very difficult to clear the inbox. So in that way, the inbox is a state of, I think it's an indicator. It's like a thermometer. It shows the health of the system overall. If you can quickly run through 20 things that are on there and get them to where they need to go, you feel like they will be there waiting for you when and where you need them to be waiting for you, then you're in good shape. That whatever the structure is, whatever shape it's taken, likely is adaptable to you and works for you. And because it's, as is often the case with these systems, there's no one size fits all. You have to adapt it to yourself. But I think a clear inbox, or the ability, better said, the ability to readily clear the inbox in a way that you feel like you can maintain a trust of the system will indicate a health of that system. And the central question you ask is, will it be off of my mind? And the better you can answer that question, the better the system will be organized. And that I get straight from David Allen from the Getting Things Done idea. That, will it be off of my mind? That's the measure. And then if it's not, if it won't be, then you have to build the system to make it off of your mind in a genuine way. So just a couple of practicalities while we're here in the inbox, and then I'll get into more of the structure of things. The settings that I use here are different than most of the settings. I will let me go into my settings here. I have things as remaining, and I leave the layout at fluid. There's only one other place that I leave the layout at fluid, and that's in review. Other than that, so it's just I'll go into some of those other settings elsewhere. But this is the main thing. I like being able to see everything in a task. I like having the project, the tag, defer, and due date. Pretty much everything I need, except for the repeats, in which case I can get there quite easily with Option Command I and engage the repeats how I would like. But it's nice to have all of these things together in one place while I'm in the act of processing it. Another thing that might be worth adding is that sometimes when I've done a few different things, let's say I've got a project of sorts with several different tasks in it and ideas, and I like being able to turn that directly into a project. And the way you do that, just as a review, well, actually for most it's Shift Command 1. I've actually changed that to Control Command 1 for myself for reasons I won't get into. But you can just hit the Shift Command 1, and suddenly you have a project. And it's very, very nice to be able to just quickly create a project this way, because oftentimes you might be in the middle of doing something and realizing you want an easy list that you can get to that's separate from everything else. And this is a quick way to get to it. It's automatically focused here. You can add more to it. You can do whatever you want to it, and you're good to go. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so back to the inbox. Let's go into the today list, all right? Because I think this is often what is the most interesting or thought through thing. So let's say it looks like this. Make it something like that, right? This is basically what my list might look like. It's very simple. The settings, just so you can see them, slide it over here. No, that's not what I want to do. There we go. I'll stop sharing. There we go. Available, things are available, not a project or group. I like to see things that are due soon, flagged, or tagged with current. And I'll show my tags in a bit, but this is the equivalent of, let's say, a today tag. I just like the idea of current. The word current is both a river and the Farsi word for mind, as well as present now. It's just, I like that sort of idea of current. Things are ungrouped. I sort actions by flagged. I'll show you why there's that. And I leave everything empty. I like things clean and clear. And this is actually my preference setting as well in my general preferences. So if I went there, it would be exactly the same. But I just leave it there for now. And I keep everything a dull gray. If you look at my perspectives, most of them are quite gray. Occasionally there are things that are other colors, but I like gray. And let me just show you with this, though. Let me add projects so that you can see what's going on here. Add projects. There we go. So almost everything in my today list is pulled from only a few projects. I have routine projects. I have the major routine. I'll describe all that soon. I have what are called engaged and the secondary routine. So most are routine, and there are only 3 here that equivalently are my most important tasks or big rocks or things that I am actively working on that have a limit to them. They, at some point they will be done, and I will replace them with other things. Everything else, for the most part, are the structure of the day that helps me move forward with the day. Now, I don't need to see all of that. I can remove the project. Again, I like a very simple, clean list. If there's something I want to work on just right at the moment, and I like the flagged sorting by flag, because I can just flag it like that and we'll move to the top. Flag in this way becomes what I want to focus on right at the moment. Alternatively, let's say I'm working on something and I want to get back to something very quickly. I can call the quick entry window here and say, I gotta call Nick, and I'm gonna flag that, and it'll just appear at the top of my list. Oh yeah, that's the thing I got to do once I get back to my computer. So I like having the flags be available for that. It is a shift between the way things were with OmniFocus 2 and into OmniFocus 3. The main thing that pulls this together is the current tag. So anything that has current and is available will show up here. Do is just as a kind of backup, and then flag just as a momentary thing. Something else I can mention here is that all of these, or most of these, have within them links, right? And those links will take me to different parts of my system. Here I noticed that this is my test system, my demo system, so I haven't run it through exactly the way I want. But I have a text expander snippet, for example, that I can add links pretty quickly. So I do that and hit type in the name of the perspective that I want it to link to. I can do that, and now it's part of the system. And I have a quick way of accessing, any one of these tasks, the work that's associated, by hitting Option space, and that's linked to a script through Keyboard Maestro, where I do hit Option space, and it'll just take me straight to the folder in which I can do the work that I want to do. Again, this is a demo, so there's no tasks here. Let me see if there's one that does have tasks. Let's go to Communications. Let's see if that does it. Yeah. So I've got some things in here. I can run through all of these tasks. I have my communications, do whatever I got to do. Once I'm done with, let's say I've just finished all of this, I won't mark it complete, but I can mark this complete then, and I move on with the rest of my day. Anyway, so that's the main structure. Let me show you how it's created, though, in my project side of things. So let's go to projects, and let's open up the sidebar here. So, turn that up. I largely organize things through the areas of responsibility ideas and then I sandwich the day with routines and secondary routines. You saw that in the today view. The exception to the sandwich is on the top here is my office stuff that I just get, my clients and things like that, that I will do their work first, or I privilege their work first as needed. And since OmniFocus tends to organize projects or organize tasks, at least it defaults to like top to bottom in one's project library, then things at the top tend to take precedence. It's not always the case. You can sort otherwise, but it also helps me think things this way too. Anyway, navigation holds one end of the sandwich. Secondary routine holds the other. So these I think you guys can figure out. These are mostly just individual projects and things that I might be working on. But these are all linked to through navigation. This is probably the most interesting of the bunch. Now, the central components of this are engaged in part. And opening this up, you can see that these are the three things that you saw in the today view. Let me create a tab here and go to today just so you can see it. And you know, you can see these same ones here. Now, if I go back, these are all linked to the projects that are related or tasks that are related. So just like you saw before, I can dive into the work from my today view, engage it to the depth that I feel would be good for today, and mark it complete, and then it'll be waiting for me tomorrow. Now, I like this because I like to have things that might be, you know, what's next in line. I don't want to do more than three things. I find that 3 projects for me is about the bandwidth that I can take care of. And I prefer to only have one if possible, but I've got a lot of things going on, and it's most often about at least 2 or 3. What's nice about this structure is that I can quickly change things around. So, for example, if I decide I want to improve the office internet, I just drag and drop it here. And let's say for now I'm going to put this on hold. I just drag and drop that there. And now this is now the active project, and this is just waiting. Maybe I would remove the deferred date on that. And so now this would be appearing in in the today view. There it is. And that's now faded out. If I hit cleanup, it's gone. So in that way, this has become a nice system for me. I like being able to maintain things at just a certain amount. And also when somebody asks me, hey, can you do X, Y, or Z? You know, I have a good list of, you know, what I really want to get into soon, very nicely laid out. And I can make a decision and say, you know what, let me, it's going to take a few months before I can get to it. Or, you know, if it's something that I can push other things that are parked already further back, I might say, yeah, I can take that on if it's particularly important. It's just nicely laid out for me. Major routine is, these are routines, but they take time. They might take, let's say, half an hour at least. So, you know, the weekly review, taking care of financial matters, my music practice or things that I'm working on. I'm doing more guitar work lately, and so I'm, you know, just have that all lined out here again with a quick way to access that. I put all my paperwork on Wednesdays. I do my billing on Thursdays. I do my continuing education work on Tuesdays. So I've kind of streamlined these things as the one extra thing that I got to do beyond the engaged work. And that's not to say there isn't routine. I've got 72 items, it seems. Lots of, you know, things that I'm doing, you know, things got to take care of, watering plants and communication stuff and other financial matters. Tend to, you know, I just have them all grouped there. And these usually don't show up in the today view. These will show up in what's called a quick task list, and I'll show that soon. Activations are my way of saying, you know, to myself, when do I want to begin something? So one of the important, I'll call there's a workflow fundamentals, right? There's 3 things that I say contribute to the workflow fundamentals. One is deciding to do something, 2, putting it in front of yourself, and then 3, doing that regularly. Those 3 things will move most anything forward. And of course, there's an engagement process that goes with that and all that. And I can get into more of that. But the thing is that leads to, when you practice that, when you do that well, you realize that most things that are large or are anxiety provoking, have a due date, that are looming, you want to start them as soon as possible. Because then that gives you more days to do it, more days to access it, more days to engage with it. And much easier said than done, of course. But there's, of course, many things going on, and I can't just, you know, suddenly add something to that's what I'm doing now. So these are ways of saying, you know what, I want to make sure that I begin something by a certain date. So let's say I want to make sure that I begin developing this by December 1st, or this one I want to make sure I begin by December 14th. And not sure why I have this one on repeat. It shouldn't be. So let's take that off. Anyway, adjustments probably is the same thing as activations. I'm just playing with this idea, but this is more like sudden changes. You know, like let's say I suddenly have to deal with car breaking down or something. I might say, assign car fix to navigation, and it automatically gets added to a quick list. So I will see it. I won't throw off my day having to like fix this within the scheduling, and I won't have to like think about what am I going to put on hold right now while I start this up. Rather, it becomes its own work in a quick list. Maybe that's a good segue to go to the quick list here. But anyway, this navigation is kind of the heart of the maybe not heart. That's the, if I'm going to use my metaphors right. This is the brain system. This is the neural system. Is the navigation. The heart probably is review. So let's go to my tags. Now tags, I don't often work directly from tags. I most often am working from perspectives based on tags. And sometimes those perspectives are only about a single tag. They are, but I will do that because it's now accessible on the phone more quickly, or I can assign a key command to access that list. So that might be the only reason. Because actually, you lose out when you create a perspective based on a tag. You lose out on an important thing, which is you can now manually reorder tasks in tags. So if you want to, you can just do that. And that's also new in OmniFocus 3, which I think is neat. But I lose that by using the perspectives. But just to show you what these are, current, I mentioned, quick, are just things that are quick and easy to take care of. What I want to do is clear my quick tasks within a single session if possible. So if you go back to the today list, one of those things was clear quick tasks. And I have a way of just accessing that tag. Usually, again, I have a quick perspective that I didn't put in there. But let's go back. Let me actually just show the quick perspective if I can. There it is. And I have it organized in a different way. So it's just like, these are the quick things I can do at the office, quick things I can do at the laptop. Here's that one I just created. Generally, I want to be able to do these within a single session if possible. And maybe I can only do some of these at the office and some of these at home, and I might write a task along those lines that says, go and do those things. All right. Communications. Here are the communications. Actually, I've recently switched the waiting for up to the top, so I'm going to put that there. I just like being able to review what is it that I'm waiting for first, and then start going into my calls and texts and emails afterwards. Once I've taken care of something, let's say I've called the internet service provider. I have a series of text expander snippets that would let me change it to a waiting task that has an assignment as to where it'll show up on my list. So let's say I want to make sure I call back in 3 days if I haven't heard from them. Type CTC3, and it creates that. I might also put in a message, another text expander, ILLM, that says I left a message at this time. And then something you can do, which I like, is you can, while you're holding command, you can drag and drop onto another task, and it will clear what's in there and just assign that one task. So if I do that, the call tag is now gone, but it's assigned a waiting for tag. So I like that. It's a nice system there. So anyway, so that's that. Office, obvious tool, just gather those things together. Home, different parts of the home. Car, music, have different parts of the music system. This is kind of like a Kanban approach. Like you have things in one state, and you can move it to another. So if I'm working on a piece of music here, I can drag and, holding command, drop it over there. Digital audio workstation. This is where I'm actually developing things. I might have some redundancy there and probably don't need the edit one at the same time. Anyway, anywhere, consider, errands, all things that are places to go. Agendas. I have quite a few agendas in my actual database. I have all for my clients. I have friends, family. I have communities as well. So like I might have my mailing list. I might add some ideas of what to talk about on my mailing list. That's in there. Study. I have a lot of things to do with my kids, so I might like say, okay, these are all the things I got to go through, like kind of a checklist. And are you doing these things? Yeah, no, all right. Just kind of go through that and then consume. So trying to batch all of my news and social stuff into one single place. So I might like just have I've dedicated a tag for that recently, and that way it's not just kind of filling in the spaces of my day. And so those are the major things. I'll just show you kind of my perspective stuff here instead. So I got this idea actually from you, Tim, I think, where you can like create these dividers. I think you're the one who did this, and I really like it.
Yeah, I think I can take credit for that. So it's just an empty perspective with, I think it has to be a medium-sized dash for it to become a continuous line.
Yeah, I did. I'm using underscores. I didn't use
underscore. Okay, that'll work too. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, maybe I'll try that too. I don't know. But yeah, so this, so these are the generally, if you want to just kind of take a gander at them if you have questions about them. This to clear one just kind of compresses everything together. So all of my communications, quick and current tag stuff all come together, as well as other considerations. Considerations are there too. So it just puts it all onto a single list rather than have the today, which kind of distills, the larger setting of things. Different individual music-related stuff, or maybe individual project-related stuff. I have a bunch of review-related. I don't use all of these. Some of these I'm more kind of playing with and experimenting with. These might be perspectives that I use to engage something. Like if I focus on something and I want to look at it, I'll actually show that one in a second. Anyway, so. Anyway, I don't know how much more in depth I can go.
Got a few related to estimated time. Is that something you're using regularly?
No, I'm not actually. I played with it, and I think maybe I got these from Rose. I remember seeing her doing something along these lines, or maybe I can't remember exactly. I've never gotten into the estimated times. I keep trying, and then I just don't. Maybe at some point it'll click, but it hasn't.
Well, I would just throw an idea in there. One way that I use them is in my system, I've got a hot list and basically everything I intend to do today, whether it's due or not. And sometimes I'll just go through and put an estimated time on each of those items. And then there's a script that will add up all of the time, so I can just see if I'm in the right ballpark. Am I planning 12 hours of work when I only have 2 hours left or something like that? So
sure.
Yeah.
That could work. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Just generally, how do defer dates fit into your system, and is your use of defer dates different in OmniFocus 3 than it was in OmniFocus 2?
So basically, most things that are repeating will just show up again tomorrow. I do have a perspective called Treading Water. There it is. Which, actually, if I set this up correctly, there we go. So I might just catch what I haven't been working on recently or something like that. And since this is my demo database, things are like way in the past. On my usual database, I might have things that are like maybe within the last month, or otherwise I'll sit there and go, okay, I'm going to remove the defer date on that. And this is a perspective that I'll review weekly as part of the weekly review. Beyond that, it's a matter of keeping things unavailable until they need to be. There is one place that I do play with it a little bit. That might be interesting. So let me go to the artistry perspective here. So this is a perspective that's based on a single project. So here's the project, which basically these are the things that I do to keep on top of things in terms of playing music and developing myself there. But I can't do them all. So similar to like the navigation idea, I add a defer date to a few of them, at which point those ones with defer dates and are available will show up in this artistry perspective. These are the things that I'm working on. And the artistry perspective has, they're available, they have a defer date, and are contained within this specific folder. And then from here, I can go to something that, these are the pieces that I'm working on right now, for example. And as I'm done with them, they will also disappear until next time. And each one of these has a different repeat frequency. So if I go to this is like a list of all the pieces that I've been kind of working on, or that I just have in my fingers. And so like, a light, for instance, I could practice that once every 8 weeks, probably even longer than that. It's still in my fingers. Whereas, the pathétique shows up every 3 days, because if I don't practice that, I lose it very quickly. So you can see that there's this like kind of hierarchical structure based on defer dates.
So it sounds like a defer date, and at least in some cases, kind of elevates an action and makes it more important than one without a defer date. Is that a safe statement?
Yeah, at least within that, particularly in that artistry perspective. Yeah. And then, so, if I've done all of that, I can kind of mark all of those complete and go here, and I am done with that for the day. It goes like that.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Are you keeping ideas in OmniFocus as well? That's something people often struggle with is, I just had this great idea that I might do a year from now, or I might never do. So something that's not really defined is more of a maybe thing. Where would that live for you? Would it be in OmniFocus itself, or do you have somewhere else you keep track of those things?
It depends on what the idea is. Post ideas, like things that I like to write a post about, I'll keep that in Ulysses. It's a text program. Sometimes just odd ideas, random ideas for artistic creations, next CDs that I'm working on, things like that will actually live in OmniFocus. Might sit there as a project called Projects to Consider or something like that. And those most often have a someday maybe tag that are set on hold. So it really depends on the material. Other things I'll have in DevonThink, for example, I just sit there because chances are I'm not going to look at it for a long time, and that I know that probably they're more accessible by way of search, and then
Cool. Yeah, and on the subject of DevonThink, that was one of the questions that came up, and I know there's a lot of DevonThink users within our community, and that's definitely a topic we'll be delving into more deeply. Do you have any sort of formal integrations between OmniFocus and DevonThink, or do they kind of exist in their own sort of silos in a sense?
Well, the only thing the main thing I do with DevonThink is I've connected a key command to copying the link and adding something to the inbox quickly. So I might select a file and then hit Control Option Command K, which is my clipping command, and then it will add a link to that item in DevonThink and open quick entry, and I can just type in what I want to do with that, and then it'll be now a task in OmniFocus. And I very much like it because I find that like the links to DevonThink more reliable than links to Finder items. Maybe that's just my computer, I don't know. But like I can move things around in the DevonThink database and it'll still remember where that was. I can always get to it. But if I've moved it around in Finder, chances are OmniFocus is going to say, like, can you please find this file? And I'm like, all right. So it just, for some reason, however they've done it with DevonThink, they've done a very good job of creating that link.
Yeah, and just having it be something that doesn't break, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay, got it, Tim.
Yeah.
And
just quickly, I do very similarly with MailPlane, so I can have a quick, access to it like an email. That same sort of idea.
Yep. Okay, cool. If you're not familiar with MailPlane, that's an app for Mac, specifically for people who are using Gmail or the G Suite. Okay, cool. And just curious where iOS fits into the picture. It sounds like most of your work is done on the Mac, but where does your iPhone and iPad?
Let's see. I definitely use the iPhone quite a lot, actually. But yeah, I mean, this is like kind of how it's all structured up, and I use it quite regularly, actually. So family-related stuff, I might just jump to that. I might clients, I'd rather just if I need to get to a list while I'm sitting away from my computer, I can do that because a lot of my work actually is not, with OmniFocus, it's pen and paper because I'm sitting with a client, and I just find the draw of electronics too powerful, and so I like sitting with a pad of paper and a pen, but then still I need to get access to the list. If I haven't printed it, I might have grab the phone and I can access that. And then I like the numbers, on the phone. I like that, the inbox has 4 things that I got to take care of, and I've got review down to 0, and forecast is at 0. So I feel like since I trust my system in general, I feel like it's well addressed. All the things that I need to take care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives like a dashboard view into OmniFocus in a way that's not quite paralleled on the Mac just yet.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you tend to put a tag in a project on everything, or are there some cases where it has only a tag or only a project?
I tag everything. There was a time I tried not to, a little bit experimenting with that. I just didn't like it. I like having a tag to everything. It makes it so that I can think, if anything, it might be just laptop or any device or anywhere. If anything, that tag means that it's now that much more able to be engaged with some perspective should I want to create a perspective at some point. And it helps me think it through a little bit of what is it that I need to have? What tool, what something would help me engage this?
It seems it can much more likely slip through the cracks if it doesn't have that extra kind of metadata on there.
Yeah. When I see it in the one of my weekly review things is to look through all my tags, and when I see at the very top 10 different things that are untagged that somehow slip through, I'm like, oh man, and then I got to go through it.
Right. Yeah. I've got actually a perspective just called untag that I check every day. There's a repeating task, and
Sure.
Usually everything is already tagged, but that's a nice little safety net to
Totally
make sure things aren't missed. There's a request to share your Option Space Keyboard Maestro shortcuts. I think that was one you used to open the link up.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't have it directly available. It's
if you're able to send that to me, I can always post that with the notes.
Sure. Well, it was Jesse Hollington who put it together originally,
Okay.
and I've just adapted it a little bit. So maybe I could point to that post because it's not.
Yeah.
mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me write a task down.
Yeah, write it down. One of the things I took away from one of your guides is when you're focused on something, just have a piece of paper ready there and write little notes on it without even necessarily going into OmniFocus or engaging with the technology.
Yeah.
And I think you basically said to make a point of looking at that as soon as you're finished the session. And that's what really helps to build trust in that piece of paper, not something that's going to get buried and seen 6 months later or something like that. So
Sure.
it was such a nice tool, and I've been doing that ever since. It's just it's such a almost deceptively simple technique that really has a lot of power to maintain focus without worrying about losing those maybe very pertinent thoughts that come along during that focus session.
It gives you a kind of an envelope for the session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it keeps it contained. There's a question about basically any recommended references to understand sort of the design concepts around creating structure.
Design concepts around like
Yeah,
how
so
I've
yeah,
set things up.
going beyond OmniFocus, are there any references you recommend? And I certainly recommend your books.
Yeah, I'm completely biased to my own books. Well, all right. So if I can plug a couple of things, I guess so workflow mastery is the one that's like mostly about like just general concept of organization, and I had originally started thinking about how do you organize like in a particular program, but it became like I'd rather understand how to organize. What's the principle of organization? So the way I look at it is, I'll just tell you, it's so organizing is clearing and supporting paths for the development of something you find meaningful. So that's the top definition that I give for it. It's clearing and supporting paths for the development of things you find meaningful. And then there's three components to that. One is that it's got to be you got to be aware of this thing and anything that might be impeding it or the path there. So awareness. Two, it's got to be accessible. The more accessible, the more organized it is. And it's got to be avoidable when you don't need it. And if you can, the more you can make yourself aware of something when you need to, like let's say with a reminder or a particular habit of accessing something, or accessible by developing a skill or getting it closer, or avoidable by putting it away when it doesn't need to be used, the more organized it is. And just using those principles, the more you can develop it. Having said that, I've been really entertained by what's her name? Marie Kondo's life-changing habit of tidying up. She's really captured something with how she describes things. And then I've liked Julie Morgenstern's books on she's done a couple, one with time, and she's done one with just organizing in general. Can't remember the names of them, but those are good. And I'm thinking of what else. If it comes to me, I'll mention it.
So there's one about the treading water perspective. Just curious what the settings are, and is that one that's covered in your book?
It is covered. Let me go there. So treading water looks like this. It's availability is remaining, not a project or group, and groups by defer date. That's probably the big thing right there. And here I've left it as fluid. I would change this at some other point. Maybe I'll do that. I think I did that, but anyway. And those are the settings. Just basically where you have had things deferred. Actually, so let me add. Let me do it like this. So you can just see the deferred. So anything that has a defer date, you can see it kind of placed when it was last belonged. So like, oh, I stopped checking my smoke detectors apparently a couple of months ago, so that's a bad thing. Or I was supposed to schedule my dentist cleaning or so. Anyway, this is again my demo database, but you would know what you're behind on as a result of this perspective.
It's an interesting question here. What are your key learnings of what not to do in OmniFocus? How did it shape the way you set up your OmniFocus environment?
What not to do.
So what are some kind of things you maybe have tried and seemed like a good idea at the time, but wasn't very practical at the end of the day?
Well, there's one thing I used to do quite a bit that I actually used and was useful. A couple things. One was, and I wrote these in like the first edition. One was where I had this big long list of things to do as you're leaving the house and you've got young kids, and you got to pack the diapers and the things and the whatever. It's like a huge list of things you got to do. And because inevitably, if you don't have it, you're walking out the door and forgetting 3 of them and you got to turn back. And then I had a way of like creating this template where I would change and replace tags, like context at the time, in the process of doing work. And it became very fiddly. And it was useful for me as I was learning the program and getting better at it. And I think it was useful for others too. But in the end, it became far too fiddly. And really, a simple checklist would have sufficed. If I just like got a pen and paper, wrote it out, maybe laminated it or something like that, that would have been better. So that's one thing. The other thing, I still can probably use it. Maybe I'm just not doing it enough. I don't know. But where you can create a modular system of things. Let's say, I'm creating a piece of music, and I want to record it. I want to process it. Maybe I want to post it. Maybe I want to add it to an album. Maybe I want to register it with American Society of Composers and Performers. All those things are different things I could be doing, and I might have like individual projects on hold and then drag and drop them into like a project to activate them. In the end, I decided not to do any, maybe I did a little bit just to kind of like learn the process. And then once I did, it was just more work than it was worth to create and put this thing together when I was actually doing it. Now, I think it was useful for me to actually design all of those templates. I think, it helped me think through something, but I don't use them anymore. I don't know if that quite answers the question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. I get one takeaway for me is giving yourself permission to experiment with things, but not know when it's time to let them go and then becoming overly fiddly, or if it's just something you thought was going to work and it didn't, that's fine. That's all part of the learning experience.
Yep.
It's a good one from Matt here. For those of us who have grown a dumping ground inbox with a huge number of items, you recommend specific first steps for morphing that into your structure, as I covered in detail in the book. And I see that quite often where people will get very good at capturing and they'll end up with hundreds of things in their inbox. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think basically what you're asking is how to kind of dig yourself out of that. And I guess ideally,
so I think it is covered in detail. But the short answer is that idea of no, there's a short answer. All right, the question of do you trust that it'll come back again? The idea of come back to how I phrased it originally. I lost it. Where did I put it? Will it be off my mind? Yes. That's the way. So the will it be off my mind question is important, because that's, I think, fundamentally, it taps into that same organizational concept. And then if it's not going to be off your mind, you have to genuinely ask yourself, what is it about this that doesn't have it off my mind? Either I should be doing it right now, or no, I can't do it right now. I've got other things. Or even if you just don't want to be doing it right now, that's fine. But can you schedule it such that you will see it when and where you need to see it, to start it when and where you need to start it? And the more you can do that, the more it'll be off your mind. And that process is what structures everything. So you might add a deferred date, you might add a notification, you might put it into your current list, your today list. And then later on, you might look at your today list and say, this is too much, I can't do all of this. And then you might say, okay, well, now I can't trust that. It's not going to be off of my mind. So, okay, so what do you do with that now? So that's where, the navigation system started to build, for me at least, where I had, 3 things that I was working on, and I wanted to be able to see all those 3 things at the same time. So move those there, put things that I had too much of onto my parked list, or on the quick list if there were quick things, so that I can make the today list very easy. And then I looked at the quick list, and maybe that was too long. And I said, okay, clearly I can't do all of these things in a single session, so maybe some of those become someday maybe, or some of those become less frequently done. Or I have to start saying no where I need to say no. So it's a much more nuanced process that, again, results in the inbox becoming like that, and your ability to clear it as kind of being the indicator of the health of the system. So it's, it's a lot harder to just start you almost want to just start with the inbox when you're learning it, but it's a lot harder to because you don't have anything to put things, any places to put them that you genuinely trust at the moment. and reflecting on what do I trust and how can I build from there is much of what builds any of the systems on OmniFocus or otherwise, and relationships as well.
Yeah, one thing, just to kind of paraphrase what you were saying, it sounds like the amount you've accumulated in the inbox is kind of a cue to what your commitment levels are to some extent. And so the challenge might not be that you are not very good at processing the inbox, but that you're actually taking far more on than you can possibly do in this moment, and to the point where it becomes counterproductive to even attempt to do all those things simultaneously at once. And then it becomes something that you park, and a park sounds like something, is it a bit like a consider, something you're going to consider in the future, but for now it's not getting any attention? Or?
Yeah, it's I guess subtly different in that it's like I fully intend to add it to the engaged soon. Once those are the ones that are there, that are just waiting for one of those three things to be finished or discontinued or something like that. So that's what
there might be dependencies that prevent you from doing anything about it.
Yeah, but they're waiting for time, and that's distinguished from the large database of stuff, just because these have now been they're just ready to go. They're on. I was thinking of another word instead of parks at one time when I was naming it. Just like on deck was the other.
On deck, yeah, okay.
Way of putting it.
And something you've shared before, and I've heard David Allen share many times as well, is just being meticulous about, or I don't know if meticulous is a word, but developing regular habits around clearing inboxes, not just in OmniFocus, but in your email and your physical inbox and things like that. And to the point where it's almost like you're like tidying around your home, you're putting dishes away or something like that. It becomes second nature, where it's the kind of the tolerance for having too many things goes down to the point where it's like taking a shower in the morning. You want to have a clean inbox regularly, so you're not dealing with the sort of scuzz factor of having a lot of things in there.
Sure.
There's been a number of comments, people marveling about your keyboard skills. I guess that's from being a piano player. Comes very naturally, but I think efficiency is a big piece of this too, and that's where learning the keyboard shortcuts and having that just be under your fingers and automatic. Really.
Learn the keyboard skills. Actually, partially it came from not only piano, but playing StarCraft back in the day.
Okay, there you go.
First one, and you just had to be fast with the. I can't do it now at the same speed that people do now. But you just learn. Okay, do this. You get several moves in a second, and you're where you want to be.
So video games can be good productivity practice.
I like to say so. So just kind of like a list of different things that I might be doing. And it's all set into a sequential set. And I kind of do a series of different things. And these all have their own links as well. So maybe I'll be reviewing individual folders. Actually, I never do this. So I'll probably do it this one. These I'll do, like reviewing the forecast perspective or reviewing, other type of things that I think are important. Basically this shows up in the review perspective, which I can get. I don't have my, that's not the one I want. Use the perspective. Review checklist, there it is. So, looks like this, and the settings here, available, not a project or group, and contained within review. And basically just, it's very simple. Do that, and then the next things show up. And then I can do those, next things show up. Just kind of stepwise through. And this shows that I haven't actually set it up correctly. This thing should have completed automatically. No, it didn't. And then the next thing shows up, go through all of those. And then do my Devon Think stuff. Last bits. Review any attachments. Archive things. Check, like in you go into your sync area, you might sometimes like if I accidentally, if I reset my database somewhere, it might have like an old database that it's thinking of. Anyway, sync all devices, rebuild the database, and done. And then generally this thing would be gone, but since I haven't done it in a while, so let's say let's put this in today. And once that's done, then it'll be set for next week.
Okay. So basically it's not giving you this stressfully long list of items. It's giving it to you more piecemeal. And
yeah.
And it sounds like you've kind of got things ordered in the based on, what gets reviewed first, and maybe the ones that are a little less critical end up at the end of the list.
Yeah. We're just
Yeah. That's one thing I remember from when you were first on, is the sort of psychological impact of looking at really long lists, and how as humans we like to see short lists of things, and even if we have 100 things to do today, it's nice to be looking at a list of 10 in the morning instead of all 100. And
right.
I think that's one of the beauties of doing this digitally too, is there are so many different ways to slice and dice this without it having to take a lot of time. Okay, well, I think that might be a good note to finish on. To echo what Tor wrote, I'm fascinated about your calm focus and your way of structuring an OmniFocus, and I think you definitely have that Zen quality too, and that's always something I've admired. And where there can be a lot going on, but it doesn't mean we need to get into that hectic, overwhelmed state. It's possible to be, and I'd say it's probably much more productive to be in a relaxed state and more Zen state, and end up getting a lot more done without all the unnecessary drama and stress and things that can come from sort of alternate approaches.
I agree. I think a calm state of mind is a place that engages that playful state when possible. That creative something that tends to show up more readily, more welcoming to the muse.
Okay, well said. Well, thanks again, Kourosh. I really appreciate you sharing all your wisdom. Getting a lot of thanks coming in through the chat box as well, and a lot of people are wanting to watch the recording again because there's a lot to take in. So I think it might take a few passes through to really get all the gold. And if you haven't already, I definitely recommend picking up a copy of Kourosh's book and even just reading it over the next few months. You don't necessarily have to read it all in one fell swoop, and just start to integrate some of the wisdom that he has to share, and you'll have that there for reference as well to supplement other sources. So thanks again, Kourosh, and
thank you for having me.
And sometime soon. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks as well, everyone for joining, and everyone who's watching the recording. And I'll see you again soon. Take care.